Welcome to the Equity Conscious Leader, a new generation equity podcast and YouTube channel where we chat with leaders about tangible system change and strategies to advance and sustain equity work in their organizations. Our conversations dive deep into the 6 dimensions of equity conscious leadership. So how do you lead with transformational system change for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? Let's find out on this episode of the Equity Conscious Leader with your host and educational equity leader, Dr. Jag Lathan.
Talk about the impact that this project or program or way in which we are now as a city in support of our neighbors who need housing. What is the impact on not only the city, but those individuals who needed the support?
Well, I would say 3: impact just on the city, impact on the individuals, and impact on the community. So the impact on the individuals is astronomical because you're changing people's lives as we speak. People who, all they need is that one opportunity. And for some, it won't be one opportunity. It'll be a few times that they have to go through this process. I've met people who at the hotel over in Pittsburgh have gone 3 times, but they eventually make it. And then some people just don't make it, and then they just have to go back. So there's that transformation of an individual and being able to have the opportunity to then be on the right path or on the path that makes sense for them. And then, of course, then there's the transformation in City Hall. We have the unhoused resident coordinator. We have the new Department of Public Safety and Community Resources because we wanted to redefine the meaning of public safety. We just didn't want it to mean police. It means other things, including providing services to our neighbors without houses and being able to stabilize their homes. And so that created a new department in the city of Antioch, and homeless services is a pillar of that department. And so that includes a new department head, the Public Safety and Community Resources Director, and a host of other management positions, outreach positions, management and outreach positions. So we now have people who are going to be out on the streets, providing these services or getting people connected to these services. So that was big. I mean, that was huge. Part of going on this exploration or this journey on this homeless encampment task force also then forced us to create a new assistant city manager position for the city, because a lot of this falls on the city manager. We said we needed to kind of expand the portfolio of the city manager, and that means he's going to need support. He or she would need support. So it's changed the city a lot. But interestingly enough, it's forcing that department forces other departments to work together that they've never worked together before. And so this department has to work with Parks and Recreation. It has to work with Public Works. It has to work with our planning department. And we've never really seen that. They've all worked in silos in the past. Okay, here's what I do, and then we pass this application to you, and then you guys do what you do over there at Public Works, but we did our engineering stuff over here in the community development side, and that's to the extent of it. So it's been interesting. It's also changed. Antioch hasn't really always been a place where people are constantly advocating or are activists. And the issue of unhoused residents has certainly kept activists engaged in the process. So it's changed from that perspective. And then lastly, the community overall, when I was elected mayor, I said in my inaugural remarks, I said, I'm going to focus on not the things that we can't do, but the things that we can do. And so I think I met a gentleman who waited for me all day at City Hall for me to get there. Conservative, truck guy, all day just to tell me thank you for opening the hotel, and that he was just absolutely honored to meet me, and that no one in the city has ever done anything like that. So I know it's had a profound impact on individuals throughout our city because they see what we can do instead of being so stuck on the things that we can't do.
You have brought up a lot of really good points. And one, you talked about the bureaucracy, right, of systems. And you just really, the way you described taking us through the naming, reflecting, and acting, is the complexity of equity and the complexity of changing a system. So it's not just we identify the problem, right? Because you talked about that. It is, so now what do we do? How do we get impact, or not impact? How do we get input from the city, from community? What do we need? Who do we need to hire to support us? And then like all the bureaucracy just to get the actual hotel and then zoning and all of that. So it just the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in multiple industries and areas, especially government, public schools, things like that, it can become a daunting task for people to say, I'm an equity conscious leader and therefore I'm going to do all of this work, because it takes time, right? So it took the city, it took the efforts of the city council 2.5 years to get this done. That is complex.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we got very lucky when, Ron Burnell was a great city manager, but he didn't have the expertise on homelessness. He then hired Rosanna Moore as the assistant city manager. She had the expertise literally in bureaucracy. And so she was a blessing in on God's side, because she literally, once she got here, where we were going was mapped out. And so we could do check-ins like where are we here, versus kind of, shooting by the hip, which is what we were doing before. We're like, well, I think this works.
So you had a plan. It had a plan of how you were actually going to get there. We had an implementation plan. That's what we call an education.
Implementation plan, but then you also have to be prepared for the setbacks, because none of this is without another bureaucratic institution having a say. So the fire department shows up and says, oh, we think you need sprinklers. Well, now that's a new delay. That's the reason it took 2.5 years is because it was always some other government agency say, oh, you need this, you need that, or there needs to be this, or there's disputes between the value of a building. And so it's just,
yeah,
it's challenging.
Yeah. How do you stay in the game to continue to do the work that you do, changing systems to ensure that folks' lives are just the way they should be?
You got to stay woke. And the reason I'm deliberately saying that is because a lot of right-wing people have stolen or trying to steal the woke word to try to redefine it to mean you're just exaggerating, you're being extra sensitive. Woke is being able to identify racism, classism, sexism within these systems of oppression, whatever you want to call it. And so if you can identify where those things exist and work to root it out, then that's what people should focus on. Dealing with homelessness to me is that. Dealing with individuals, if Black men don't get killed by the police as much as someone with a mental health challenge. And so I'm all for looking at this problem here, but the larger problem has been over here. And so that's why it was so critical to take a step back as a city and say we need the crux, the centerpiece, the crown jewel of our police reform efforts has to be in a non-police response team, period. Because when you look at the police killings here in Antioch, it isn't just it's a diverse set of individuals is all I can say. And so when you're able to stay woke and identify those things and jump, head first,
yes,
and work through the bureaucracy, then you're gonna have success. But it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. It is not easy turning back the clock or undoing decades and generations of racism.
Yeah. This has been so awesome. I learned a lot from you. I continue to learn a lot from you. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the city of Antioch, California. And thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Antioch Mayor Lamar Thorpe, for being our guest today on The Equity Conscious Leader and for sharing your thoughts, experiences, and expertise on how to lead true system change through a lens of equity. The Equity Conscious Leader is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.